Berberine was introduced much, much later as a powerful way to modulate glucose levels in the body by modifying glucose metabolism. It turns out, Josh, that berberine has a unique capability of overcoming insulin resistance at a cellular level.
All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Ultra Life Today. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Josh Bellieu, and I'm hanging out with
Adam Payne. You're kind of queuing me up here, aren't you?
I am, absolutely. Now, Adam, I've got a little housekeeping to do here. Do you love what we're doing? Subscribe, share. I think we have incredible, relevant content. We have amazing guests, because today it's just me and Adam, and I've got this guy captive. We've made him turn his phone off and everything. So he's moved out of the CEO mode. He's got his innovator invention hat on, the quizzical genius guy that I've come to know and love over the years. So I'm going to throw out a few words that should get our viewers and listeners revved up.
Maybe excited.
Glucose metabolism, weight loss, metabolic health, blood sugar support, prediabetes, diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, or as it's called these days, type 3 diabetes, right?
Alzheimer's, type 3 diabetes.
And hey, gut health, healthy cholesterol levels. I could keep going. I mean, berberine, the more I learn about it, our good friend Keith Bishop, Adam, has said to me for about a year, berberine, and he just gets this look on his face. Well, no wonder, Keith, I didn't realize he's taken such a deep dive into Alzheimer's and dementia. I had no idea that this ingredient is being researched for its benefit even in Alzheimer's disease.
Well,
it's astonishing.
When you think about Alzheimer's, I mean, they are calling it type 3 diabetes. For decades, everybody, researchers, the NIH, most of the key opinion leaders thought, okay, it's this amyloid plaque that's causing the disease. Somehow the brain is making all of this amyloid plaque, and that's causing this reduction in the brain size. So if we can stop the production of amyloid plaque or somehow inhibit its production, that we're going to take care of this awful disease. I mean, I don't know what would be worse, honestly, Josh. Me getting a diagnosis of cancer, or somebody like us getting a diagnosis of
telling
Alzheimer's.
You we were going to lose our brain, basically.
I mean,
how frightening.
And it is frightening, except for guys like Keith Bishop. Now, we should actually get Keith here. We had Keith here.
We did recently to talk about diets, but we will bring him in one day into his sweet spot, because his sweet spot.
Can we dial a friend? Can we dial a friend?
We can. We'll have to think about the whole phone a friend and Lifeline stuff.
We can.
Anyway.
We can call in Keith and ask him to comment on berberine and Alzheimer's.
I guess we could.
We can.
It could completely throw me off, but if you want to do that and throw me under the bus,
I think I'm going to do my dial a friend card here a little bit.
So let me throw out, and this is
just because he knows so much.
So here's a nice disclaimer. If Adam and I today touch on things like mentioning medications such as metformin, we reference clinical research on the show. We want to be very clear in communicating. We're not doctors. We're not giving medical advice. We always recommend you consult with your healthcare practitioner about anything related to diet, lifestyle changes, medication use, supplementation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, we're just idea guys here. We're providing it. We are inventors. We've made some really innovative products that actually enable berberine to be absorbed.
Yeah, as our dear friend Kyle Drew says, we birthed as a biotech company. Adam still calls us a biotech company. Kyle calls us a delivery company because this unique patented technology that Adam and some of his colleagues out at Oklahoma Medical Research Foundation brought about years ago.
You got it right.
Yeah, brought about years ago to be able to identify certain plant bioactive compounds, and through this patented technology, unlock them into the bloodstream on a molecular level where they're free molecules in the bloodstream, hitting the bloodstream at unprecedented levels, and then actually migrating to sensitive cell receptor sites.
Ooh.
It's brilliant stuff, man.
Well, that's a new, that you just created a new concept. Sensitive cell receptor sites.
I was reading a lot about
sensitive cell receptor sites.
Yeah, I know.
We call them ligands.
I did add that into the mix because as I was reading the other day, I realized, such as nanoparticle type things, that nanoparticles, as you and I know, you can measure them in the blood. They'll go all over the place, but oftentimes they're in places you don't want them, or they never land on the specific sensitive cell receptor where they can do the best work.
They can't. They can't. Nanoparticles, and let's just cover it just briefly here. You know, there's a lot of nanoparticle formulations for curcumin.
Tons. There's a lot of concern about nanoparticles too, in the medical and in the supplement world.
Well, there's different concerns for the carbon nanoparticles that people are talking about, because those things will go anywhere and everywhere. And guess what? Those nanoparticles will never break down. You get something like fullerene, which is like a perfect sphere of carbon.
C60, right?
C60.
Yep.
That stuff will never, ever break down. It's permanent.
Scaring me now.
It is. It's not nothing to be scared about. It just it can. The issue is it can accumulate and will go anywhere. But we're digressing here.
No, it's okay. So
but those nanoparticles of curcumin that can get into our body, those aren't bioactive, because they're not you have to still, that nanoparticle is billions and trillions, literally, of molecules of the substance of curcumin, whether it's a nanoparticle of curcumin. If we have nanoparticles of berberine, it's an agglomeration of billions and trillions of molecules that haven't released from that matrix and are available to interact with the cell. With those, what do you call it? Sensitive
cell receptor sites.
Okay.
You heard it right here from Adam Payne as he's breaking down the Josh Bellew paraphrase into some awesome, innovative language that's on a little bit higher level than me. So, Adam, I got blown away as I was looking, because when I think about nature, I think about what God has placed on this planet, different references in Scripture relating to that, to herbs being healing for us, for the nations. Then you hear Hippocrates, talking about diet, medicine, let thy medicine be thy food, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Here's what blew me away, Adam. Did you know there is between 450 to 500 genus species of berberine existing within plant life, literally almost all over this planet? That blew my mind.
All right. Well, what you're talking about, though, is these are different plants that actually make the berberine molecule, but it's still the same molecule. It's not different berberines.
Right.
It's different sources of berberine. Okay.
And what really got to me is, now wait a minute. When I learned that, I thought, okay. I mean, Assyrian manuscripts dating back to 650 BC mention using what is often called barberry, but we call in modern day berberine. And so I just thought that was
somebody
crazy.
Somebody did their research.
Yeah, but
here.
Then it gets even weirder. Then you got it in traditional Chinese medicine dating back well over 3,000 years. Ayurveda, same thing, goes right back to the beginning of Ayurveda,
right.
But even utilized in various forms of bark and plants by Native American and indigenous cultures all over the world.
So what you're saying is that wherever berberine is found, it gets integrated into natural medicine.
It does, and that's what hit me, Adam. I'm like, God thought berberine was important enough that he widely dispensed it and made it very available to people in different forms, from bark on trees to bark on herbs to plants.
So Mr. Josh here, you've done your background research and some of the stuff. So in what forms is berberine, kind of in the traditional medicine sense, where does it find its application?
Well, it's really interesting because, when we have our friend Ed Fletcher on sometimes.
Oh, I love Ed. We miss him.
So, but you have the root being used in a plant. You have the stem being used in a plant. You have the aerial form of the aerial form. So you've got part of the leaf.
So there's all these different sources, right?
They all have unique and different applications, Adam. But let me kick in a couple of things that I heard to answer your question. So in cultures, mouth infections, ear infections, quick healing of wounds, curing of hemorrhoids, indigestion, dysentery, treatment of uterine and vaginal disorders is really big among native populations with berberine. So it also must have something to do with
so let's just touch it.
Of menstruation and even childbirth and things like that.
There's all this. Berberine has an immense spectrum of antimicrobial activity,
antiviral and antifungal,
antifungal. Right?
Crazy.
It really has. It's this natural antibiotic, you can say.
And I'm still running down a clinical research reference that was made in a meta-analysis that blew my mind. It talked about the diversity of the gut microbiome, and you and I kind of think of berberine as disrupting both all the gram-positive, the good bacteria and the bad.
So what are they saying?
Well, I kept trying to find what they were referencing, and I couldn't find the reference because they were intimating that it could have a positive effect on the diversity of the gut microbiome, but I haven't found that research yet. But I thought that's intriguing.
So there was just some intimations about that?
Yeah. They just threw this sentence in, and I'm like, where's your reference? And I didn't see
it's
it.
interesting.
But it was in a meta-analysis, and you know how they do pull things together in meta-analysis.
That might just have been something called wishful thinking.
So now get this one. This is a really interesting one. Even dating back into the cultures, people that had struggled with obesity in native cultures even, which would be an anomaly, right? Because they eat so well. They would use berberine.
Yeah, obesity
they would use berberine for that.
Historically, obesity is just a rare occurrence.
Yeah. It's not like our Western world. I'm going to say a really, really, really big word here. Quaternal benzyl isoquinoline alkaloid. That's kind of the chemical classification of berberine, right? It's an isoquinoline. From your perspective, Adam, what got you interested in berberine as becoming part of a foundation for not only our our immune support, oncoadjuvant therapy line, but also the applications outside of that product pathway 3 for other things in people's life? What got your radar going? We got about a minute left in this segment.
So let me whet the appetite of some of our friends here. I was introduced to berberine from a friend of ours. Boris Gorenstein.
Of course it would be Boris.
Boris,
he's got some
we got to get him on the show again. Even though we had a big disagreement about what black pepper extract was doing to curcumin and kind of.
I love it.
I disagree with him about that. He thinks it has to do it, whatever. But he created a formulation. I met Boris because he created a formulation to help his grandmother deal with bed sores.
Okay.
His grandmother was bedridden back in the Soviet Union. He had a naturopath background, and he went to Boris has some training at one of the biggest research institutes of Russia, and he created a combination of berberine, aloe vera, ginseng, and passion flower extracts that he solubilized into a cream and applied it to his grandmother's bed sores.
Hitting the pause button here. This is Ultra Life Today. You've been listening to Adam Payne, CEO of Ultra Botanica, lead inventor of our amazing technology, liquid protein scaffold, LPS. I'm Josh Bellew. We are going to be right back, and we're going to dive more into berberine. See you in a minute.
Our mission is to take nature's most beloved botanicals and enhance them with our liquid protein scaffold technology. This helps it reach your cells faster and better. With exponentially enhanced bioavailability, you'll feel better every day. Ultra Botanica, the feel-good curcumin.
Hey, welcome back to Ultra Life. Today, what an engaging conversation as we take a dive, maybe not even a deep dive, because this is such an amazing ingredient, into berberine. So I'm hanging out with you, Josh Bellieu.
I'm Adam Payne. I'm the CEO of Ultra Botanica and the inventor of the curcumin you can feel, UltraCur.
So I completely interrupted you as you were telling this story about your friend Boris in Russia that had
Soviet
invented a
Union.
unique bed sore cream that contained, of all things, berberine, right?
Right. And so this is my first introduction to berberine. Boris knew it as a substance that could help cells overcome insulin resistance. So his grandmother was diabetic, and she was getting bed sores, and the prognosis was grim. Just because of the nature of her disease, she was going to, there was nothing, even if they, the protocol is you move people from one side to another every 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you can get pressure sore.
So dangerous.
And then the tissue goes from stage 1, which is just like a bruise, to stage 2, which is a lesion, like a cut, and then it breaks down. The tissue further breaks down.
Necrotic, gangrene.
It doesn't even have to go to gangrene.
There, right?
It just the tissue breaks down and loses its ability to heal.
Wow.
And so Boris came up with this concoction, and my gosh, it healed bed sores. It heals bed sores. If anybody's dealing with bed sores, there is a solution out there. I have nothing to do with the company, so I can talk about it day and night. I have zero financial incentive around this. I just want everybody to be clear about that. It's a product called Berberex, and I conducted a clinical study with people with stage 4 diabetic foot ulcers, and it goes from stage 1 to stage 4. Mm-hmm. You can't go higher than that. It's all the way down to the bone, and which is kind of the worst case kind of pressure sore.
And it's the next step toward potential amputation, right?
Oh, if you're down to stage 4, you are a candidate for amputation. Yeah. They don't have anything that they can do. I mean, the problem is with the stage 4 diabetic foot ulcer, it's down, you can see the bone, and it's so easy for that bone to become infected. And if an infection starts, you're dead, because that infection will travel all the way up the bone into the body, and you're dead. So the moment an infection starts, they want to amputate. We were able to close all of the stage 4 diabetic foot ulcers within 12 weeks by using this combination of berberine, ginseng, aloe vera, and passion flower on these wounds. You don't have to do it yourself. You can buy a product called Berberex. It's available online on Amazon. It is a wound wash, and it will save the life of yourself and your loved ones if you are dealing with this.
So Boris introduces you to this. It gets you revved up a little bit because now berberine is on your radar.
Right,
but
and it's having this amazing effect.
But for years, it wasn't on your radar enough to want to introduce it into some things that we do here.
I didn't
I know
know,
you talked
Josh,
about it, but what have you been learning that got you so revved up to say we need to consume it?
So
we need to take it through your technology.
I didn't know that there was a problem with absorption. Not until I really took a look at it. Berberine is not a polyphenol. When we look at the LPS technology, liquid protein scaffolding, it's ideally been built around polyphenolic compounds. These are plant extracts that have phenol rings, and like curcumin, most of these polyphenols are poorly absorbed.
Yeah, and there's quite a large family of those.
They're huge. There. It's huge. The family is almost never ending. Berberine, it doesn't share that same chemical identity. It's not a polyphenolic compound.
So you weren't sure it would actually work with the LPS technology?
I wasn't
initially.
Sure, but and I didn't know that berberine had a huge problem with absorption. It's less than 1% of berberine that you take orally is absorbed into the body.
Right.
And that's a problem because the unabsorbed berberine, guess where it stays?
It's going to be very similar to curcumin. It's going to hang out in your gut.
It stays in your gut.
Yeah.
But curcumin is not that bad for you. I mean, it can be irritating.
It can create a little gastric disturbance on occasion. Yeah.
It does. For a lot of people, it does. But for the people with berberine's highly antimicrobial.
Yeah.
So you get that mixed into the flora in your colon.
In some ways, you could almost compare that to an antibiotic effect,
It is like
right?
an antibiotic,
Because it goes
yeah.
in and it doesn't make, I don't care if you're a good gut bacteria or a bad, I'm going to get rid of you, right?
It's gonna disrupt normal biosynthesis of the bacteria, and it causes problems. So a lot of times, people that are taking berberine, they get gastric disturbances, diarrhea, and other issues, pain that comes from this disturbance to the biome in the intestine. Now we don't have that problem with our berberine conjugated to protein because all of it's absorbed.
See, I was so excited when you told me one day, only about 3 years ago, that you'd begun to play with different substances that fell outside of the polyphenol family into this berberine.
Well, it
isoquinoline.
was an accidental trope into the wilderness because
we don't believe in accidents.
it was.
But
Well, I mean, it sort of was. I mean, I looked.
A happy divine accident.
Berberine has been something that Boris, my friend, has been working on for some time, and he actually asked the question. He said, "Adam, will berberine work?" And I'm like, "Boris, it's not a polyphenol. I don't know." And so we looked at a number of different characteristics of the entity of berberine, what it is, how it behaved in the presence of ethanol, how it behaved in the presence of different proteins and amino acids. And lo and behold, the LPS technology worked. And it worked really, really well, to the effect that we were seeing results that nobody was seeing.
Yeah. Well, and that is, if the LPS technology works, to me, it's like it creates a superclass of a plant bioactive that is light years different from what's sitting there.
That's a great expression. Yeah, it is a superclass.
It is.
That allows it to be present to the sensitive
cell receptor
sites or
ligand.
You're going to
nail me on that.
The simple way, the cell receptor site is a ligand. So you just say it enables it to go to the sensitive ligands.
Beautiful.
Right, there you go.
Beautiful. Okay, so as you began to discover that LPS technology was working on berberine, I bet you immediately your mind began to click on what would be some practical applications, especially to our Western culture, our Western world, the way we eat, which is historically, I mean, we know, driving through drive-thrus, packaged processed food with so many ingredients that are unpronounceable.
That wasn't my natural progression. I mean, so Boris and I worked on this for 4 or 5 years actually, before we even brought a product to Ultra Botanica.
Okay.
We were working on. We had a product called Ultra Cardio,
which morphed its way into Ultra Defense, by the way.
Yeah, Ultra Cardio is our curcumin product with olive leaf extract.
Yep.
We didn't have the berberine in there.
Correct.
Berberine was introduced much, much later as a powerful way to modulate glucose levels in the body by modifying glucose metabolism. It turns out, Josh, that berberine has a unique capability of overcoming insulin resistance at a cellular level.
Would you do something for me, Adam? Because so many people are pre-diabetic and don't know it. So many people are now full-blown diabetics. They're taking oral medication, taking metformin. They're potentially on insulin. Would you try to break down in layman's terms this concept of insulin resistance in your body and what's happening there and why this inability to modulate glucose creates such a problem with inflammation, right?
Well, inflammation is an indirect result of there being too much glucose in circulation. When it comes down to it, insulin resistance is a very complex phenomenon, but it results because the cells become resistant to being able to utilize insulin that's being presented to them.
And so in that context, what happens with the sugar molecules?
Well, the sugar molecules start to coat our red blood cells. And the red blood cells, so the skin of a red blood cell starts to accumulate sugar molecules all over it.
This is good.
And, an A1C is a measurement of how many sugar molecules are actually on the surface of the red blood cell. The higher the number, the more sugar molecules are coating that red blood cell. And the reason why they, on an average basis, and the reason why that we can measure is because the life cycle of a red blood cell is 90 days. When it's birthed from its progenitor cells, it has a 90-day shelf life. And when it's birthed, it takes on the sugar environment of its environment. So if you have a high glucose in your body, that red blood cell at the moment of birth will have a lot of sugar on it.
And am I understanding that if the sugar molecules are coating this red blood cell, is that almost like protecting it from getting the good guy insulin in there?
No.
What's happening?
It's not. Well, it's just a phenomenon of what's going on metabolically in the body. So if there's a lot of sugar, that red blood cell has a lot of sugar coating it.
Okay. So
unfortunately, the reason why that's pro-inflammatory is because those sugar molecules kind of act like sandpaper.
Oh, wow.
And as they're going through the small blood vessels, the capillaries, those sugar molecules end up damaging the capillaries, which is why one of the reasons, it's not all of the reasons, but it's one of the reasons that we believe that we get damage over time to capillaries, why diabetics have poor circulation is because the capillaries over time become more and more damaged.
One of the studies I found on PubMed, Adam, that was a meta-analysis, and tell me if I'm responding correctly to my interpretation of that. A meta-analysis goes out and looks at as much of the published clinical data as possible, right?
Yeah.
And then it brings it all together, and then it creates statistical significance to various things they find.
Well, it agglomerates all of those statistics together and trying to make analysis of trends across multiple studies.
So many of the studies were related to obesity and insulin resistance, just like you're talking about now.
Okay.
So I thought that was quite interesting that they've really dove into that. I mean, I can imagine a drug company would love to hit the mother lode of a drug that wasn't creating side effects, but that was very powerfully modulating glucose metabolism, right?
Well,
that would be that would be like the life-changing.
So metformin is one,
time.
but berberine also has this unique ability to overcome insulin resistance. So it helps our cells to actually utilize insulin and be able to metabolize the glucose in the Krebs cycle and create energy. When our cells become insulin resistant, that means our pancreas has to put out more insulin in order to metabolize glucose.
Wow.
And so as that becomes more and more of a problem, that's when we become diabetic, and our blood sugar becomes really, really high, and our ability to manage glucose metabolism and energy becomes very problematic.
This is Ultra Life Today. Do you love what we're doing? Guess what? You can share. You can find us wherever you find podcasts. Share with your friends. Do you want to learn more about liquid protein scaffolding technology, LPS technology invented by this guy and some friends of his? You can go to ultratoday.com. You can find out a lot of information there. Keep in mind, things you read on the website or things you hear us say, we're being very ginger about things we say because there are very specific regulations that the FDA has in place, the FTC has in place regarding messaging, supplementation, and comparing that with drugs. So we stay very far on this side of the line. So read between the lines, do your own research. This is Ultra Life Today. I'm Josh Bellieu.
Adam Payne here. Stay tuned next week when we continue this discussion.